Good evening, Agile campers. I know it's been a long day, and I want to assure you that your eyes are not deceiving you. I am not Stacy Louie. However, I am Drew George with K-Force, representing our partnership with AgileCamp and Nike, and very excited to be introducing our closing keynote speaker for the evening. Currently, Geeta spends most of her time focusing on large enterprise transformations in the digital space. She comes to us from Humana, and we're very excited to have her aboard. So please welcome Geeta Wilson.
Good evening. Oh, good. Like, I can tell you that I'm absolutely flabbergasted when I was looking at the screen, because I was thinking there's going to be 3 people sitting on the way back row, and that's all that's going to be here left when I go up and talk. And look at it, you're here. And so I'm going to ask you to do this. Get your hand. Give yourself a nice pat on the back for being here. Like, I'm between you and the weekend. And usually people like, tell me if I'm lying, usually people wade out or fade out at like 4:30 on a regular day, let alone it being Friday. So congrats on making it. I'm sure you're learning a lot. I'm sure you've had well, let me ask you, how's today been? Thumbs up? Yeah? You got a lot out of it? Yeah? Are you ready in charge to do Agile? Yes? Are you really, some of you? Maybe. Well, you know, when Stacy, and I have to admit, like, you're in the middle of some history making. Because we in the startup world or the corporate world, we have to really challenge ourselves to work differently and work better. And you're in the middle of, whether you're coming as a new Scrum Master or you're coming from, like, you know, years of doing this, or just starting and learning about Agile, you're in the middle of a process within the startup world or the corporate world where, and the startups have a little bit of an upside here, like a head start. But us in the corporate world, I work in Humana, and, you know, we're talking about 50,000 plus people, and here I am at Nike, and you know how big they are too, of trying to work faster, trying to be more nimble, trying to create velocity, and still not compromise the business. Right? And that's really difficult to do. And I think the shape shifting in terms of being a really large conglomerate organization and moving fast, you're in that momentum and that movement. And, you know, I look at Stacy and I look at where, you know, what he was doing and the group was doing. And this is not by any means something small. It's going to continue to catch, and it's going to continue to ask us to challenge ourselves. So that's why I wanted to, like, I didn't want to just do a download of like, hey, how do you become a Scrum Master? First of all, wrong person anyway. But second of all, like, how do you engage yourself, like, to projects and to work that is actually going to move the purpose and the mission of not just your individual area, but the company forward and the strategy forward. And so I took a step back and said, over the last 4 years, what have I learned? What are some of the things that I have learned? And you're going to get, the first part is my attempt, my small little attempt to try and say, how do you protect and insulate yourself against, I don't want to say failure, because I know we use fail fast often here. And so you learn fast, but against working on the right things versus just working on stuff. So how do you ensure, like, the area, body of work that you're addressing may be something that's going to be carry you through? And it's something that I've had to ask myself with portfolio of projects that either my team has done or we've been engaged with, or large transformation efforts. Secondly, so that's the first part. Secondly, is what have I seen in the how that we work? So not the what, but in the how that we've worked. What are some of my observations? And so I've got, I want to introduce you to 2 personas that have become very familiar to me in my experience these last couple of years. That sound good? All right. Now, if any of you start sleeping or drowsing off, then I know I've just got to truncate and get to those personas. All right? I'll watch. So I've called it the Evolve CX book, Playbook, because we're continuing to be a work in progress. When I look at the continuum of what remains most important for people in terms of the everyday consumer, something has not changed throughout ages. And I pulled up a study from Accenture just recently and said, and Forrester, and it showed that 43% of consumers are upset with the amount of a level of service in the US. How many of you disagree with that? You probably do? You think it's high? You think it's higher? Okay. It's probably more conservative, you're thinking. Yeah. And when they Accenture interrogated, what is it in service that makes it so bad? And it's the unacknowledgement of someone's time. My time matters to me, and throughout ages, that has been a constant for any individual. And as a corporation, or as an organization that's delivering service, we may not be cognizant of actually the time that consumers take. But today, I'm here to tell you that it still has not changed. The preservation of time in someone's life is perhaps the most important factor as we try and look at any capabilities that we're trying to address. Internally in our organization, we're facing, particularly in healthcare, in the industry, disruption is happening. I'm sure you're familiar with it as you engage in your space, but yes, digital disruption is happening. We all know that. Hands up those who did know that, or those who didn't know that. You don't want to put your hand up here, but it's happening and we know it. And so, what's the impact? Well, it's asking you to, fundamentally those things that used to be your go-tos of how to operate are obsolete. That's why you're all here. You're figuring out, how do we work differently in our organization so that we're not jumping back to something that won't work, right? More traditional, more project management that won't work, or waterfall that won't work. And so we know that digital transformation, not only has it impacted the way that consumers want to interact, but it's addressing inside of our organizations how we actually change the way that we work and rethink routine. Just a quick, in Humana, there's 5 cultural values, and one of them is rethink routine. And I find that I can regurgitate all my cultural values in our organization. I'm not saying that as a point of don't you have a great memory? I don't. But they did it in such a way that they created values that are memorable, like rethink routine, inspire health, cultivate uniqueness, thrive together, and pioneer simplicity. Those are our values. And so when I think about rethink routine, it comes from a place that we're trying to, in our DNA and our organization, do. However, there are a couple of things that challenge us as we move from one area to another. One is that, and McKinsey did a study, and they said there's 2 shifts that are happening. As you look at the disruption that's happening with technology, and you look at what the new ways of working, there's 2 things. One is the siloed way of working, i.e. different functions coming together and trying to rationalize and socialize the work amongst each other, is shifting from being a siloed way of working to more cross-functional teams, right? And I know that you know that because you're in some of those teams or you're leading some of those teams. The second shift that's happening, and this is really important for companies like ours who have been built on legacy systems. Capabilities are also being built now from being individual capabilities and solutions that are worked together in one business unit or one area. The shift is also happening. Those have to be sequenced. Those particular levers in the experience have to be coordinated. And so, gone are the days where you do a CRM and you build a CRM over here without the notion of what the product is that's going to go in it that you service it with. So there's 2 shifts that are happening while we're facing this disruption. One shift is the move to work in coordinated experiences amongst silo teams from cross-functional teams. And the second is multiple capabilities have to be conjoined together in a very mindful way. Well, that's good. And I've actually seen myself evolve this way. One is what's the shiny object of the day? Could it be AI that we use? And so people have this conversation around their company about what AI tools they were going to use. Or it could be big data and analytics, or it could be the Internet of Things, or it could be blockchain. And so there are all these things, all these technologies that are saying, bite me, choose me, right? And yourselves, you have to like protect yourself against, well, what do I choose? What do we choose that's good for the strategy of a company and also for the maturity of where the organization is? Especially when you know that it's not capabilities that you're trying to put in place. It's actually experiences that you're trying to engineer together, right? So these are capabilities that have to be sequenced in order that they deliver on an experience. Sometimes we're moving so fast, and I was having a conversation just there at the back around, and it's with the Nike partners, like how do you move things forward, especially like when you've got projects that look like they're succeeding, but how do you move forward when you've got a deadline to approach, or you've got a commitment that you've made, or a budget cycle that needs to be reinforced, that is annual planning versus like more series A, B, C, like startup type planning. How do you take all of what you're facing to do and find a space to actually drive to the end outcome that you're looking for? And I found sometimes to go forward, you need to step back and create for your teams a space to seek answers. So that's what we're going to do. Really quickly, you may know this already, and I'm not going to apologize because you know it already, and hopefully we come from the place where we can actually effect change together, and you're just reminded of something you already know. But when I was in MBA school, how many have heard of Clay Christensen? How many are familiar with his work? Just name out some of the things that he's written. What's that? Blue Ocean. I think I heard someone say Innovator's Dilemma, right? And there's this theory, jobs theory. And we sort of dusted off that, and it's become in recent times something that you look at. And again, this is about preserving what you work on is the right things. And so he just wrote a book in the last 2 years called Competing Against Luck. So insulating yourself against working on things that do not matter to anyone. And it's called Competing Against Luck because he says there's a science to it. It is actually not just about chance and being there at the right time and the right place. There's actually a method and an approach that you can do to predict the turns in the road, the turns in the corner. And he calls that jobs theory, and he calls it jobs to be done. And I found this book fascinating as a reinforcement of consumer experience that I work in, that there are jobs to be done. And as a consumer, you hire that particular product or that particular service to complete something for you. And so he says, in this world, if you look at jobs to be done, it'll help you to predict what to innovate. It'll help make sure your roadmap are focusing on the right things. Or it will help for you to perhaps pursue opportunities that hadn't been pursued in the past and what consumers want to buy as well. And I know Jeff Bezos has a lot of airtime out there, and I actually admire how he leads the organization. But one of the things that he will not waver on is he goes, to insulate myself against failure, I look at success, and where I find success is when I work from the customer back. And so one of their high things on their agenda, and we work closely with Amazon, is customer obsession. And so when they look at customer obsession, they look at the jobs to be done from a customer perspective. And that's what I mean when I say, okay, how do you look at preserving your success as you go forward and working on the right things and which products will succeed? You go job hunting. How do you go job hunting? What do you do? Well, at Intuit, the CEO there was Quicken, and there was, before that happened for the businesses, the corporations, they would see individuals who were managing their own finances now apply the same finances tool to run their business. and he spent time in people's homes looking at what they did. And he would find that the same tools that they were using to solve for their own personal ins and outs, and they were using for their commercial enterprise. So what was born was a whole new product set for the commercial world, had less features, and it was more expensive. But they started to interrogate what consumers were doing. That's workarounds. That's an example of a workaround where the customer is trying to do something, but they figure it out themselves by using bubblegum or, tape to figure out how to do it. The other one is if you want to go job hunting, you look at where they'd rather do nothing than do this. I remember when I first got pregnant and I went to Toys R Us. As a new mum, about to be new mum, I went to Toys R Us and I'd never been to Toys R Us before. I had no reason to, potentially. I was self-absorbed as being a student and then going into a working career. So I had no real interactions with children. You might say that's sad. It was. And so I went to Toys R Us. And I remember just passing the shelves of toys, then to get to the shelves of all the baby products that there were. And I remember looking at everything, and I was just clueless about what to buy. Should I buy that rattle or this rattle? Should I buy that? You know what I mean? Parents, it's really sort of a maze. And so what I did is walked out with nothing. How can that happen where you go somewhere and there's all this plethora of options, but you don't choose any? And so one of the things that Clay Christensen says is that when you see that happen, you've got to interrogate that job that they're wanting to do. And what is it? For me, it was, what's the first few things that I need to buy for my baby that I'm prepared? And I couldn't make that choice go in there. But lo and behold, this year, we've seen Toys R Us, right, take a hit in the industry. The other thing, and you might describe that as more than a hit, really. The other thing is looking at something that's close to home, meaning that they're trying to make it work. Akio Morita, when he founded Sony, remember the Sony Walkman? Who remembers the Sony Walkman? Ah, okay. Sorry, didn't mean to be so loud. It's nice when we're kind of in the same generation that we appreciate the Sony Walkman, because I remember going to school and having those headphones on and bouncing. But before the Sony Walkman was born, what did we notice in people behaviors? Go ahead. The boombox, right? People carried this boombox around. And he noticed it. Akio Morita had noticed it. And he said, you know what? I think we need to we need to have and create a product that folks will have that they can walk around with. And his own product team has said, are you crazy? It wasn't on the agenda. It wasn't on the product roadmap. But they went ahead and created that product, later the Sony Walkman, which gives us, if you think about the genesis of that, to where we have technology in our hands right now with the smartphones, you can see how it was born to the evolution of the Walkman, right? To you remember the small digital player? We had MP3, and then we had come on, help me follow it. We had MP3, and then we had iPod, right? And the small little thing, and you're like, wow, I'm so cool, I have that. The shuffle, and then you can, you keep going. But it started with consumer behavior that they were trying to solve for. The second is, look at the resume of the experiences that your consumers have. Reed Hastings, the CEO of Netflix. What do you think he answered when he was asked what business he's in? Just shout out to me. What was Reed Hastings' answer when the interviewer asked him what business he's in? Huh? Entertainment? Anybody else want to take a guess? Technology? He said, I'm in the relaxation business. Because I don't compete for another form of entertainment. I compete, remember the first thing I started off with, time? He says, I compete with how somebody uses their time for relaxation. And it brings in a whole different thought process by how you serve up an experience to someone who thinks they're in the relaxation business versus the entertainment business. All right, so these slides are going to be available to you anyhow, so I won't go through everything that's on this slide, but I'll tell you that when you interrogate an experience, you're looking at, and you're interrogating a job to be done, you're looking at the context. You're looking at what that person was trying to do beforehand, what that person was trying to do during and after, right? Who were they doing it with? Where were they doing this, right? This workaround. What were they trying to do? How were they trying to do it? And so context really matters, along with relevance, along with, like, are there shifting patterns when they're trying to complete this job? How much progress are they personally making? Right? Are they getting halfway through or part way through? And then at the bottom layer, you start to say how much integration is involved, how much emotion are we addressing with this job, and what are the types of people or the segments that, does it apply to everyone or does it apply to some? In our lab, and I've been running this lab for about 4 years in the company, there's 4 tenets that we work and how we work. One is we gain deep customer empathy, which is where I'm saying start with the work. The second is go broad to go narrow. Remember how I talked about sometimes a solution, you see a solution? You have to suspend that. And you have to see the problem, which means that you have to go really broad first, almost like you're repeating yourself, almost like you know things that you already, you're going through things that you already know. But instead of looking at the data, you start to now look at and follow the experience and do side-by-sides of folks who take calls every day, or folks who are like in your stores. You'll learn things that perhaps you hadn't learned, and then you suspend this idea that you have the solution already in hand. Once you think broadly, then you start to go narrow, especially as you start to evoke emotion, and then you experiment rapidly, and you go from low fidelity to high fidelity until you're ready to build and scale. All right, that's about as much I'm going to share on the what to work on. This is where it gets a little bit fun for me, because I want to take a step back, and because it's almost like, oh, Geeta, that's a great answer. I'll go and read Clay Christensen's Competing Against Luck. I'll arm that with everything that I've learned today, and boy, we're going to do business. That would be silly of me, wouldn't it? If I was to tell you that it's just so simple. If I was just to say 1, 2, 3, and 4 gives you the 5 that you're looking for. The truth of the matter is that the work, if you are doing the work, you're going to find yourself on a roller coaster. You're going to find times when it's going to be higher, and times it's going to be like you feel like you're going against the grain, and is it worth it? There's this roller coaster that happens. Do you agree? How many have just had a straight up ride from the beginning to end and it's not stopped? Been fun all the way. Not so, right? It hasn't been the case. And so I want to set aside the corporate speaker moment and get real with you. And if I can, shake that can a little and release that ring pull and let it explode just for a little bit before you go and start your weekend. Is that good? All right. So I told you I was going to introduce 2 personas. The first one I want to introduce you to, you may already be familiar with him. And this persona actually has multiple personalities within them. And it's weak sauce. Right? And just so happens, I had no part to play in this, just so happens, sorry, men, Mr. Weak Sauce. And the thing is, when I looked up what weak sauce meant, because my grandmother asked me what weak sauce meant, like she really knew. You can tell I fabricate some parts, but she did not. But when I was, some people did ask me, what does a weak sauce mean? So I was like, well, let's go and look at the Oxford Dictionary, because it would have it there, right? So here's what the Oxford Dictionary told me about weak sauce. It told me that it's something of poor or disappointing standard of quality. Truth be told, it is Google that told me this. So something that's of poor or disappointing quality is how we describe Mr. Weak Sauce. Well, if I break down the multiple personalities of Mr. Weak Sauce, and this is now, like, what? Get ready for this roller coaster of yourself. of myself. Here's the stuff that I had to ask myself time and time again as I lead teams, and I still do. To what extent have I incorporated weak source into who I am and the way I work? And so the first was looking at, in weak source, there's waterer. The waterer in weak source actually takes your idea, takes the project, takes the things that you had set out to be a standard and dilutes them or sprinkles a little water on them. So far, you start to think, I don't think this is what I meant. But waterer will dilute it and start to change the idea. I don't know if some of you have worked with waterers or indeed are a waterer. But waterer will take your ideas and dilute them. And sometimes they can even drown. Sometimes waterer can take your idea and your solution, drown it, and so you don't recognize it anymore. Or it may be easy. This is where you dust off we've done this before, actually 4 years ago, and I've actually got the playbook that we can use right now. So waterer is familiar, you're familiar with waterer because it's a dilution or a drowning. With easy now, the easy comes along and says, no, we've done this before, we just dust the playbook. Or the easy in a scrum master will be, they take the daily huddle and they'll check the box. They're like, did you do that? Oh yes, did you? Great, you did that. And you're like, well, how did they do it? When did they do it? And the interrogation doesn't happen in the way that you perhaps want. And so there's the easy in weak source. Or there's anxious. And some of you may know anxious. Some of you know anxious because you stand next to anxious and they're like, very soon you are like, I'm chill. And then you're like, no, I'm not so chill now. When have we got to do this? And anxious knows how to spread their anxiety. And they will be, you may not even know it, that you might be anxious and that you may be projecting that anxiety. And so anxious finds its way into weak source. And there's another one that finds itself into weak source, and it's sometimes not so familiar, but it creeps up on us. And that's night. Night wants to take your idea and make sure that they were the ones who came up with it. Or night wants to be the one who, as we would say, comes in like a knight in shining armor and saves the day. And so their whole point or the whole driver to go and do something is so someone will say, you saved, that's right, it was you. It was you, young lady, that brought this solution to us. And without you, we couldn't have done it. Thankfully, you're here. Or there's symbols. Now, you would know symbols because they don't let the work carry them. They don't let the conversation about what they're interrogating carry them. They let their title carry them, or they let their position carry them, or they let their status, that they're in the business and they're not shared services, carry something through. Or they let how they are and how they look carry them through. And so that's symbols in weak source. Then there's almost. Now, almost actually, and these are real life characters, so you know, whether I've demonstrated them or I had the opportunity to actually interact with them, almost can fool you because almost makes it so believable that they're going to do this work, that they're going to pull the project forward. And so they actually make you believe, go ahead, do the business case, do the cost-benefit analysis, and we might get funding for this next year, but put that work together. So almost gives you this idea that it's going to happen in weak source. And then there's unlimited. Unlimited is the one that doesn't look at the calendar or the time, the resources, and thinks that there's just an unlimited amount and carries on forward like it's meant to be. And then, I'm sorry, weak source is kind of large. It's a long word. But there's also can't. And can't is a disabler who always looks at the glass half empty and tells you, before they can tell you anything, what's wrong, right? And they'll tell you all and I know that some of you have interacted, right? And maybe you found yourself being the one that, who in former days would have been the one who says, let's do this, but because you've been hurt time and time and time again, and you've got a lot of history and experience, you can tell that newbie or that rookie that comes in that here's why you can't do this. And then there's the last one that we don't speak about a lot in the corporate world. And it's the unexplainable. It's the thing that defies logic and it defies reason. And it's just pure envy. It's, I want the spot you have. And you've done nothing to earn it, to earn that envy. And the truth of the matter is, we can be weak sauce. We can run into weak sauce. And yet, there's another persona I'd like to introduce you to. And her name is Badass. Sorry, guys. But Badass sees the potential. A badass is a tough, uncompromising or intimidating person. At least that's kind of what we figured out together on Google. Not sure if it's, there's probably room for more definition around badass, particularly if we jump 5 years from now or 10 years from now. But badass, I took a chance to understand badass. And badass is brave. Badass comes to the table and they figure I feel like I've got something to lose if this doesn't happen, but I'm going to do it anyway. And so they pull out a little bit of courage. They muster it just enough to make sure that something doesn't die, or that a team that needs advocating for gets advocated and that work gets advocated. And they step into a world where it's not known, but the ambiguity of it, they're willing to say, I'm going to take that risk a little bit. They don't have to have a lot. They just have to have a little bit of brave. Or there's artistic, and it doesn't mean coloring within the lines or getting a box of crayons out. It actually means that there's a part to dream, there's a part to imagine, there's a part to think outside of where you ordinarily would. And badass understands that to be a badass, there has to be some artistry. And I love, I've been in Portland 2 days. It's my first time in Portland, Oregon. And I went to the Alberta Arts District yesterday. Can I just tell you, you're in a gem of do I call it city? Yes. But you're in a gem of a city where I see artistry. I see you defying the conventions of what norm would be. Actually, you might think this is a restaurant that serves American food, but it serves Indian food. Yesterday, I walked by Bollywood Theatre. Have any of you been to Bollywood Theatre? And I was just, yeah! I ate a paratha there, and I was like, this is I've never seen this before. You defy all biases of what should be convention. And so badass in artist, the artist in badass make sure that they take time to spend around what could be versus what is. They also, now hear me now, for those who dream, that they're also doers, that they have their work anchored in getting results, that they make sure that they have this maniacal focus. I, for instance, work in healthcare, and I know how bad it is. I know how bad it is to navigate just getting your insurance covered and your benefit covered and your claim paid. And so I spend my time trying to challenge that in our company and saying, how can we get this done? How can we make sure that it is not as obfuscated as it is today or complicated it is today? And so a doer makes sure that the work that they're doing, as they're becoming a badass, that they're getting grounded in making results. The next thing in badass is that it's also an analyzer. And I mean that you make sure that you do your numbers. You actually check. If you think that this problem is a problem, then you look at the amount of call history that's been related to this problem. You look at the interactions that happen on the web channel, the mobile channel related to this problem, as an example. But you do that, you look at the data, but then you say, it's not just about the data. There's another part to the analyzer in badass, and it's the part where we self-reflect ourselves. It's the part that you analyze inside versus just analyze the outside and the products and the data that face you. You say to yourself, I've had a practice since I was 16 years old. Every day I go to bed and I say, what could I have done differently? Did I turn up with my best self, or was there an uncompromised state? Was there someone I helped or hurt in this scenario, in my day-to-day? And so an analyzer is not afraid to not only look at the problem and analyze it with data, but they're also not afraid to look at themselves and challenge themselves every day that they're being self-reflective about their actions. I love that there are solvers in badass who tell you before they go to what's wrong, they say what's right, and they look at the problem and they've already hunting and looking for a solution. They're looking at ways to make that problem right. They're looking at, I was talking to my son, who's a math major, and, clearly they do problem solving in math, right? And he was asking me about, internships that he wants to do. And I said, son, here's what I'm learning as I'm maturing in my career, that the more that someone can turn up with interrogating a process and working out, taking the initiative and self-organizing around a solution versus just stating what's wrong. I said, if you do that, son, just at your early start, the genesis of your career, you might find that you'll be useful to someone. And so a solver in badass makes themselves, even when the answer isn't clear, like I have a framing and it's called Houdini. Like I find myself, I feel like in every problem there's a Houdini. There's a way of escape. There's a way to get out of it. And if I haven't found it, it's because I haven't interrogated it enough. And so I keep looking for that way. It might be a project. It might be actually an initiative, like we're doing transformation, service transformation in our company. And I had to find a way from making it survive from one place to another place. We changed leaders, and so you kind of anticipate the turns, and you say what needs to happen. And so a solver has a disposition to making sure that they move in the way that it needs. Then the next thing around a solver is that they're solid. What do I mean by that? It's like they just have a heart. If you're going to do one thing in a badass situation, if you're a badass, it means that you just, you err on the side of compassion. You err on the side of generosity. If it means that you share your work with someone, even if you've worked on it for a long time. And then the two things that I have, what happens if you have more than one badass? You get badasses, right? And so you can't have not experimenting. And in my team, we have a saying that we say we work scrappy but not crappy. I was coming back from a trip from Boston to Dayton. I live in Dayton, Ohio. Yes, nothing compared to Portland, but it does have its gems nonetheless. And I was picked up the Delta magazine, and there was a Porsche advert in there. And it said, the status quo dies hard. After all, it has one of the most powerful forces on the planet as its ally, fear. Enemy of change, stealer of ambition. Fear is the champion of the half measure, the check swing, the almost there. It softens the hard stance, rounds the sharp edge, and dulls the shine of a new idea. None of us can pretend to be fearless. But every day we have the chance to decide how much influence our fears deserve. We figure if something excites us tremendously, there'll be enough people on the planet to make a business of it. If not, then not. It's liberating thing, this leaving fear on the side of the road, because we did not caution our way or temper our enthusiasm. A life in any form should never be a compromise, a settling for something less than spine-tingling. Courage changes everything. And that was Porsche talking about their history of how they decided to create, when there wasn't a category of fast cars, how they decided to create and build on fast cars. Any of you familiar with this picture? Good. Kevin Carter was asked to be a photographer alongside Carlos Silva. It was 1993, and he was asked to go to Sudan. And while he was in Sudan, he saw a lot of atrocities. And he saw an opportunity to picture this picture, where there's a vulture lying behind this little girl or this little child. It was later found out that it was not a girl, it was a child, a boy, who was just on his way, feet away from the food bank. This picture won the Pulitzer Prize in 1994 because of what it communicates. Carter, that was in April 1994, Carter took his life in July 1994. People asked him what happened to that young one. Did they get aid? It was his job to be a photographer. It was his job. This photo won him the prize, the Pulitzer Prize, a very sought after an award. The truth is, he had to live with himself. Now, we do find out that he was able to assist, but he saw so many things that it was hard for him to live with him. And I'm not saying that you should not pursue the best of your role and the best of your job. But when you err on the side of trying to do what's right versus trying to do what's the best for your work, you might find that you have a lot more cobwebs, lot less cobwebs, to haunt you. My father, when I was younger, I'm the youngest of four kids, and I'm the youngest girl. I had 3 brothers. And for some reason, I would be the one who would get trapped when Dad was ready to give a lecture. And funnily enough, it was at the time when just the most inappropriate time, A-Team is coming on. And Dad wants to sit and talk. And the thing is, this talk is not going to be a short talk, right? And Dad would talk to me, and I would look at him like a deer in the headlights, because I didn't know what he was talking about. And I would look at him and think, when's he going to get done, and when's the A-Team? Hopefully he's going to get done right now, 5 minutes, because the A-Team is about to join. He said to me 3 things, and I remember them now. I didn't think I was listening, but years later, when he passed away, when I was 25, 26, he left me with his legacy, and he said, can you do 3 things, Geeta, in your life? And that would be the absence of fear. Don't let that cripple you as you go forward. Whatever you do, and as a young girl, 9 years old, didn't really understand what he was saying, but he was saying, do not let fear cripple you. Do not also let greed contaminate you and let corrupt you in what you're trying to do. The amassment of things, or the amassment of titles, the amassment of work or credit. And the last thing he said was let go. Let go of some things that hold you down. And that, for me, translates into projects or things or work that maybe I did work on it for 5 months or 5 minutes, or maybe I worked on it for a year, and some other team has to take it. And so he told me about that. Now, I know some of you sleeping right now, perhaps, and you're saying, this chick, you know what? She's full of SHIFT. She is. I'm saying shift. Your work is important. The things that you are going to do may be history making for some of yourselves. And how you turn up for that is going to be so imperative that you check yourself against the why and the how and what you're trying to do. I'm a vegetarian, and I've got 4 little boys. My oldest son, when he was 5 years old, he gets excited. And kids, they get excited about the small stuff, small things. We lived in a little apartment. I was still a graduate student, and he goes to me, Mum, can we make cupcakes? And I went, huh? I don't think we have any. He goes, no, and he opens the drawer, and he pulls out a cupcake mix. Now, I am a cook, but I'm not a baker. Some of you are really good at baking. So I'm like, well, yeah, sure, how hard can it be? I looked at the instructions, followed the instructions, put it in a bowl, mixed it up, turned the oven on, put them in the oven, done. Premkush, my oldest son, he's jumping around the living room, ecstatic, telling his brothers, because when kids, you look at them, not only are they got the awe and wonder, are they full of it, small things make them happy, but they also are great evangelists. So he goes and tells his brothers, guys, we're going to have cupcakes. Now, we lived on campus, and the things, because we're vegetarian, we were used to calling stuff that wasn't the real thing veggie. Veggie cheese, veggie milk, veggie meat, right? And so he's like, we're going to have cupcakes. And so he tells his brothers, and for the last next 20, 15 minutes, he's going back and forth between the oven, which back then we didn't even have a light on our oven. You remember those days where you had actually no light on your oven? Yep, someone did. And so he would look, and you couldn't see anything. So he would go back and forth from the oven to the sofa and jump around the sofa. And all the boys, now he started to we got cupcakes. Mum, is it time yet? I think it is, son. So we pull out the cupcakes from the oven. I put the baker's rack on the table because I knew to do that. And as we're taking the cupcakes out of the oven, and I put the tray on, thank you. I put the tray on. The cupcakes, they're like way wide and this thin. Now, I didn't put them in a cupcake tin. I put them in a normal tray. So Prem Kush looks at me. He looks at me, looks at the oven, looks at the cupcakes. He looks at me, looks at the oven, looks at the cupcakes. And he says, in his most innocent voice, he goes, "Mum, are these veggie cupcakes?" You see, when something is not right, you know it. And in Britain, we have a term. I'm from England, originally born and raised. And it's called squiffy. Say it with me. Squiffy. Say it again. Squiffy. Say it again. I'm spilling water. I'm hoping I can unscrew this top before you finish doing that. All right. Sounds good to say it, right? It actually, when you say it, it sounds like you mean it. It's like when something is not quite right, it's squiffy. It's not quite right. And the thing is, if you learn anything else and you don't want to dissect being a badass or being a weak sauce, just go to squiffy. Because you know it when you see it. It's instantly recognizable, and there's no explanation needed. Now, the truth of the matter is, some folks think that weak sauce and badass are polemic sides of each other. Well, if you're not weak sauce, you're going to be badass. No. Truth is that there is weak sauce, and there is badass. But somewhere in the middle, there's weak sauce, and then there's somewhere jackass. And weak sauce is actually in the middle. You don't know sometimes as a badass whether you're being a weak sauce or whether you're being a badass. It's kind of a gray area. But that's why it's not polemic. How can you insulate yourself against working on the wrong things? Look at jobs to be done. How can you insulate yourself on being the wrong person? Interrogate weak sauce, be a badass, and if that fails, just look at squiffy. I encourage you, as you go about your work and as you start the weekend, that you live it, that you become brave in your work, that you become artistic, that you don't set that aside, that you also show it, you demonstrate with real value, with being a doer, applying yourself to your work, becoming a problem solver, analyzing, and then also living it. That's just solid. That shows that you'll love it. Be a badass. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Geeta. So, be a badass, right? Where are you going to find that in any conference? Encouraging you to be a badass. Okay, so a couple closing notes. Thank you so much for staying here, but we've got a few more things that we want to cover. The first thing we want to do is I do want to let you know that there's a raffle that we'll be having. So Mary's going to bring up some of the folks, some of the sponsors. And while she's bringing the sponsors up here, a couple of quick thank yous. I want to thank first the volunteers. We have a number of volunteers, and I don't know how many of them have made their way back here, but George Lee, if you guys would stand up. George, I think I see you over there. George, John Buell, Greg's out there. Kelly Feltus, Dan Heilman, Michael Huerta Enconian, Andriana Marshall. Keep standing, too. Keep standing. It's all good. Kyla. Is Kyla here? Jenna. That's Jenna Spears, Brian Thomas, Richard Meadows, Brian Jacobson, Trish Kelly, Steve Barlow, Ashish Jain, and Chelsea Ball. You guys could all stand. All these people spent all day just really trying to put together a great program for you, and they were here last night. Some of them were putting together bags. It was like it was great. We actually had a Kanban going, and a very good flow. But we discovered that we had a problem. Remember the problem we had? we forgot something in one of the bags. So we had a bunch of rework. So we had a little bit of retrospective on the fly as we're reworking all these bags. It was really quite fantastic. And then also, I want to thank the speakers. If you're a speaker and you're still here, if you could just stand up. Thank you for speaking. It takes a lot of time. And a lot of these speakers, when they came in, there's quite a few that came in from out of town, as you've known. People from San Francisco, people as far out as Europe. So it takes a lot of energy for them to come out here, and we're so grateful for that, and we're so grateful for you to come out here and spend the time with us. With that, I'm going to hop to our sponsors real quick. And you guys can all come up. You don't have to be bashful. I don't have a mic, and I'm hoping that somebody has a handheld mic floating around. And maybe, Terry, if you could help me out with this.
Can you hear us in the back? There we go.
Okay, we'll do that. All right, so the first, if I can
I'm not drawing anything, but anyway. Oh.
Thanks.
Can you hear us in the back?
So go ahead and introduce your company, Scott. And
Hi, I'm Scott Ambler from Discipline Agile. I want to leave you with 3 messages. First of all, thank you very much for taking time out of your busy days to come to this event. This is a great event. Thank you, Stacy. Thank you, everybody else. This has really been fun. This is why we come, because this is a great event. Second message I want to leave you with is we're not actually going to draw anything from my company because we've already given everybody a book. So the message I want to leave you with is, with Disciplined Agile, everyone is a winner. I should be in marketing. And the third message I want to leave you with is, please read the book. I think a lot of you will really enjoy it. There's a lot of great stuff there. We're firm believers that choice is good and context counts. And this has been a very clear message today. So anyways, thank you very much. I'm one of the speakers that is international, and I've got to get to the airport. So I am leaving now. Normally I would stay, but feel free to contact me via email. Thank you.
great.
Hello again, everybody. I'm Drew George with K-Force. Really appreciate being here. I have to thank Bob for introducing us to this great event last year. Unfortunately, we missed last year, but put it on our calendar to make it this year. K-Force, we are a company that helps our customers acquire and retain technical talent. And we do that really in 2 ways. One can be staff augmentation, which most people know us about. And the other way is coming in and solutioning, maybe building a team, providing training and things like that. We have 2 raffle items for 1 raffle ticket, a pair of headphones, and then the highlight, which the expectation is you have to fly this during the reception, is a selfie drone. So maybe we can get this, a photo taken from a selfie drone and put it on the Facebook page or something.
Fantastic.
So here we go. I'll reach down deep for those who showed up at 6:30 in the morning. I'll read the whole number. It's 516-8721. Maybe they're not here. 516-8721. I guess if they showed up at 6:30, they might not still be here.
Exactly.
Nobody?
Let's move on.
Nobody home. All right, from the top this time. 516-8196. Oh my gosh, Colette! Former K-Force employee, now Nike.
Thank you, Drew.
Hi, we're Slalom. My name is Jeff, and this is Leslie. A friend of me asked me what Slalom stands for. And at Slalom, we believe in doing the right thing always. We believe in celebrating authenticity and in focusing on objectives and the key success of our local clients. We believe that when we work together and collaborate together with our local markets, that we can achieve amazing outcomes. A lean and agile principles are a key focus of that. So we have a local model, and our goal is to build the local businesses where we're at and to help them be able to achieve their outcomes.
All right.
589-758. Winners.
All right, nobody. Let's go again. Let's keep going.
5168009. All right, this picnic pack is ready for someone to take it home. 589-735. It's got pint glasses, a nice little Pendleton blanket.
We had a
Cheese
sneak peek at
board.
this. It's a really nice package.
589-731.
Wow.
How about, does anyone have a number plus or minus that number? We got a winner. Winner.
All right, we'll put it back in. Thank you, Slalom, for your sponsorship.
Congratulations. Enjoy.
Come on up and. All right, how are you doing, Heather? Good.
Sorry.
No worries.
Please.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for staying. Hopefully, it'll end well. I'm Heather McFarland. I'm the Agile Practice Director for Propeller. We're a local management consulting firm, and we really focus on helping big act small. So, innovation, speed, and agility. And I have, instead of investing in a booth, we bought an iPad. So we are excited about this. And it's great to see so many friends here. It's really wonderful to have such a strong Portland community. And, thanks everybody for coming. Okay, this is fun. We have 516-8021. Keep going?
Yep. Keep going. This is a big one.
I know. Last but not least, right? It's the reward for staying. 377-311. No?
We'll keep going.
I don't have anything else going on tonight, so we're just gonna.
We have drinks in front of us, so.
It's true. 377-278.
There you go.
Oh, right on.
Thank you. And I think I have one more. Mary, can you help me out up here? So you guys have seen me all day. My name is Stacy Louie. I'm the CEO of Hyperdrive Agile. We do Agile leadership and training. And I'm going to take this moment. Everybody, this is my wife, Mary. She's actually she's also our head of operations. She helps put all this stuff together. So when you think about how organized this was, and if you thought things went really smooth, it's because Mary puts this all together, and she does it like nobody's business. It's really incredible. So, so thank you, Mary, for doing all this. So with that, I'm gonna have you pick a number. This is for a $200 gift certificate for Alaska Air.
It's either 200 or 250. You'll get a surprise when you open the envelope. Maybe I should go to the. Oh gosh, I can't read very well.
Okay.
589744. No. 377289. 516-8713.
Plus or minus? She's 10? Hold on. What number are you? 714. Which one are you? Which one's closer?
Well, it's 13, so let's give it to the gentleman.
All right. Okay. All right. Thank you. There you go. All right. So a couple other announcements. IC Agile was a great partner of ours, and they're not able to be here, but they're doing a lot of these coaching classes and certifications. So if you're interested in getting some extra classes, take a look at IC Agile. I invite you to do that. And the last thing is other staff, and I want to thank, we've had a great crew out here. Renee helped organize everything around here, but there's some guys that you don't see that have been really working hard for us today that have been behind the scenes, and that's Shaun, Terry, Matt, Zach, and Justin. Those are the guys in the back. So they're in the back and stage crew, so thank you guys for really putting a great We do a lot of these every year, and they're probably, in fact, they are the best team that we've ever seen. So it's really impressive. And there's one final announcement before we let you out. Bob, where's Bob? Is Bob there? Is he coming out, Bob? Okay. This is Shaun. Shaun's with Nike.
Wow, hi. That was very loud. I'm sorry. Bob is my boss. I'm an Agile coach here at Nike. We have a couple of them here. He's our leader. Today happens to be his birthday. Now, if you know Bob,
28.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think he's about 64 or something like that. But if you know Bob, you know that he likes to embarrass us and play practical jokes on us all the time. So it would be really great if you guys could help us right now sing happy birthday to Bob. Okay? So let's do this. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Bob. Happy birthday to you. Yay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Bob.
Thanks. And why don't you stay out here for a second? Bob has been a huge partner. So every day, it seems like every day, but for the last couple of days, the last couple of weeks, and the last couple of months, Bob has actually been there as our primary partner in organizing this event. He's helped drive us to new levels, and he's worked with Mary and I for a long time. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, and he's just showed a lot of passion for this. So for that, Bob, thank you so much for all that you've done and for helping us put this whole program together.
Very welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And with that, I think I've covered everything and all the thank yous, and the last thank you goes to you guys for sticking out this day on a Friday. Now, we've got a reception. You guys are invited to stick around, and here's where you can get your LinkedIn, any final connections you want to make. One thing, if you see, this is kind of a secret I had with networking. If you see someone here from another company, or you see one of the folks from a vendor, get hooked up with them, get linked in with them, because they may lead you to your next step in your journey. You never know. So I invite you to stick around and have some, we have some refreshments, some wine and cocktails and some food. So thank you for a great event. Thanks for making this awesome.